All right. Today we are lucky enough to be joined by Richard, citizen journalist. Richard has been our eyes and ears in Washington, D.C. for, gosh, over a year now, I think, right? So we are excited to get an update and hear what's going on and some of his observations. So, Richard, thank you for joining us, buddy.
Yeah, man. Good to see you guys. Thanks for having me on.
You bet, you bet. So you've been doing this for over a year now, haven't you?
Yeah, it really started, I think, back in like April of 2020, I guess, when I started visiting hospitals. I lost my job, and I just thought that the media narrative, something was wrong. So I started to go. I started to go to hospitals here locally in Washington and the surrounding area. That took me across the country, actually, early on, and that was when I was on Twitter. I was banned from there, obviously. But yeah, it started for me then because I was showing that the news was showing the hospitals full, and then when I went to go visit them, they were actually empty. So that's how it started. And then the whole election happened, and then January 6th happened, and then that's really when I think a lot of people started following me because they wanted to see. I was showing them what it looked like here, basically.
I remember too that I guess it was right after or around the inauguration. I mean, you went to great pains to make sure you had some fundraising going on to help the National Guard and the other guys stationed in Washington to, get some decent food, get some, maybe entertainment.
Yeah, I
Get
mean,
you some veggies.
yeah, I mean that started out. I just I hadn't been working, but I still had a little bit of money in the bank, and so I started buying him gift cards and hand warmers, and then just card games because I was a National Guard myself, and these are family people. I mean, I don't know, a lot of the audience probably doesn't realize the military how it works, but National Guard they come in on the weekends and they do a drill in the summertime, but they're not active duty necessarily military, and they were deployed here in cold Washington, and some were from Puerto Rico, and some were from California, and they were freezing and cold and getting rained on. And then I don't know if you saw, but at one point, a picture came out where they were getting served raw chicken and raw food, and so I kind
Oh,
of took
that's
it upon
right.
myself to start trying to feed them some better meals, or just give them some better meals, and the response was good, and that then people around the country and stuff had sent donations. It was able to fund itself, so that was a pretty cool experience. Yeah, and that was just, I guess I was, I think it started at end of January and went through like maybe April or so when they had
Yeah.
the whole Capitol surrounded.
Yeah, it went on for quite some time. So kudos for bending steel to get them some help. I bet they appreciated it.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I mean, at one point I was getting like 20, 30 Amazon boxes a day, and it's like a full-time job just to unbox everything and put in care packages and drop it off the hotels and get the guys whatever it was, whatever the list was, foot like foot Dr. Scholl's foot pads and hand warmers and playing cards, and then along with some nice hot food that was good. So we did the. I mean, we all love our military, so it was, it was the least I could do at the time since I was here.
Yeah, well, kudos for that. So you grew up in Washington or nearby, right?
Yeah, so I grew up in Montgomery County, which Washington's actually a very small city. It's only like it's like I don't even know 6 or 7 square miles.
Yep.
And there's it used to be 10 by 10, but they took away Virginia on the other side of Potomac, which is like Arlington, Alexandria, which used to be part of DC, but now it's not. So, and I came from a little county called Montgomery County, which borders right on the line. And my dad worked here my entire life. And when I was young, I kind of wasn't the best student, and so they allowed me to kind of go to work with my dad and do work, do my schoolwork during the day. I didn't have a traditional, elementary school and middle school experience as a lot of people. So yeah, so I spent, I've had lunch at the Pentagon more times than I can remember. I've been to the White House many times. My dad was an arborist, so he was in charge of the trees. So I got to know quite a few of the monuments and the layout of downtown when I was a kid, and through my adulthood. Yeah, so I've been here pretty much my entire life. Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember I've been to Washington several times myself, especially as a kid, and I remember how pretty it can be in the springtime. And it sounds like maybe I had your dad to thank for part of that.
Yeah, well, the trees, the trees are very important. The landscape's very important. Downtown Washington, with all the monuments, the trees, and the foliage and the flowers, it's really beautiful. I mean, it's one of those. Rock Creek Parkway. I mean, if you get a chance to come here and see it, it's really quite magnificent. So yeah, it's gorgeous.
Yeah. So, thinking back the way it used to be, what are the differences you're seeing now? I've heard you make comments about a lot of Seems like a lot of people are missing. Seems like a lot of things are locked up. Take us through what you're actually seeing, if you can.
Yeah, so like right now I'm sitting on Pennsylvania Avenue. It's 305. And there's just very little, there's no traffic. The Capitol is right behind me. You probably can't see it because I'm not directly lined up with it. But anyway, the downtown area, downtown quarter is basically abandoned. No federal workers have been to work in, a year and a half, almost 2 years. The subways downtown, the buses, the streets are all basically empty and abandoned. I mean, everything's there's just no one here.
Yeah. So there are times when you see, video coming out of the Capitol showing Congress in session. Is that possible? Are they getting in there and you just can't see them?
Yeah, I mean, I think I saw Bernie Sanders one day. Basically what's happening, so the Capitol has an underground tram system, like a metro of its own.
Yeah.
And that goes to a bunch of the private clubs and Union Station and things like that. I'm pretty sure at the Capitol, they're just staying below ground or inside the Capitol for the most part. You do see Congress people out at like the local haunts, like Capitol Grill and the Hey Adams, and they're all still, it's hilarious because, and I might, I've been hesitant to post much about this because, doing what I do, I've already, I've already been in, had some trouble that is totally ridiculous, but I'm careful with the things that I post. But basically, in the afternoons, from about 4 or 5 to like 7, the Congress members will go to these bars and hang out, rub elbows with all the lobbyists. They're all drinking, spending plenty of money on themselves, and so they are here, but they're not on the streets, and they kind of stay within their little areas. But like what time is it? 3 o'clock. So the next hour or so, if I go by some of these local bars, they'll all be in there drinking, eating, and getting paid by the lobbyists to push the agenda. So that's still happening. But as far as them being like out and about or the regular hustle and bustle of busyness, they're hard to find.
I'll be darned. So I think you posted some pictures about how the buildings are organized, and it seems like a lot of them are either boarded up or locked up. When you walk up to some of these buildings, is anybody inside, or are they, do they seem to be abandoned? What's the story?
Yeah, so basically, like in Washington, you have the White House, and then you have kind of like the National Mall, which is kind of like the area where they have like the memorials, and then running parallel to those is Constitution Avenue and Independence, and on Constitution, Independence, and also Pennsylvania kind of cuts through sideways. That's where most, not all, but most of your federal buildings are, whether it be the Treasury or printing and engraving or labor or agriculture. That's where they all are, and there's no one in any of those buildings. The only thing that is there is there's like a guard shack, so the guards are there guarding the building on the outside, but no one's coming or going, and no one's inside. They have like a big underground parking garages that hold, hundreds and hundreds of cars. Most of the federal buildings have giant underground parking garages, and the guard shacks are at those entrances. And, one building might have 4, 5, 6 entrances to their underground lots, and the guards are there because they come in, they scan their IDs, and the turnpike or turnstile goes up and down, and they're just sitting there. And I sit there, I park my car and watch, and rush hour, things like that, and no cars come in or come out, no lights are on, there's no movement in the windows. So basically, all the federal buildings are all but abandoned. I mean, maybe a few people come in and come out. I mean, I think like some of the higher ranking people at like Department of Justice and maybe the FBI and some of their entourage might come in and out, but I've never seen them. But as far as the regular federal worker goes, they're literally non-existent. They're not coming out of the metros. They're not coming off the buses, and they used to in the thousands. You would see, I was telling somebody the other day. I mean, it used to be during any time of day, if you drove, Pennsylvania Avenue from the White House to the Capitol, it could take you 30 to 40 minutes. Now, if you get lucky, you hit the green lights, you can do it in less than a minute all the time.
Wow.
Yeah.
So have you asked people, where's all your staff? Do they say anything, or they just kind of ignore the whole issue?
It's crazy, like I ask these questions to people, and the fact is I'm the first one that ever asked them. They've never thought about it. They just think like it's okay. They buy into the narrative of hospitals being overwhelmed and people are sick and dying, and they're like, well, of course the government can't come to work because of this pandemic. They don't consider the fact that who's doing the people's work. Are they really doing this through VPNs and from their basements and computers at home? So as far as I can tell, I don't know how you have a functioning federal government really when no one's coming to work. But most people I talk to, they're, people around here, you got to remember, DC is a very liberal place in general, and you don't have a lot of people that are thinking, and definitely not thinking outside the box. So most people I talk to, like, they'll be like, the guards will be like, oh no, there's people here. And I'll be like, well, I've been watching for 45 minutes during rush hour. No one's entered where you're sitting in your shack. So what people exactly are you talking about that are coming in? Well, no, people, well, explain to me, sir. I'm watching you for an hour and no one's come in this building at rush hour. So what people are you talking about? They just don't think. I don't know how to explain it.
Huh. Have you been able to get, I don't know, there seems to be a lot of workers, especially guys doing digging and all kinds of stuff around town. Are they willing to talk about anything? Do they see anything weird?
So I think a lot of people don't detect the weirdness like I do, and I think that's maybe why, I get some more followers and more people are paying attention to me, because I am paying attention. Something that happened during COVID is they put a stop to just about everything. And it's dying down a little bit now, but for a while in DC, every block you went around, they're digging up something and they're taking a road up and fixing a curb and digging a hole. And I think that was because that's always ongoing in a city, remodeling and, new buildings going up. But it seemed like it was everywhere for a while. And I think that's because there was a stoppage to the work during COVID, and then it all started right back up. And but there's more of those. There's more contractors in town digging up holes than almost anything else. But when you talk to most of them, I mean, they're just there to do their job. They're not, they're there to lay the pipe or fix the wire or, lay the concrete, whatever it is. A lot of, most people here are just tuned out to anything. They don't think anything's suspicious. I mean, they're just not, it's almost like people don't remember how it used to be.
Huh. I bet a lot of people aren't from there too, so they can't compare it to anything. Huh.
That's right. It's a very transient. So what's interesting, when I go to the White House and I go to the Capitol and I talk with people, there's more people from out of country than there are American citizens, because I think, if you're willing to get a COVID test and use your passport, you can still come over here and, and all that. So there's a lot of people from Europe. There's a lot of people that I run into from different places, Austria, Germany, even Australia. I've run into a couple Australians here lately, but there's very few Americans here. And then the foreigners, they know something's weird. Like, this is weird. Like, where is everybody? I'm like, I know, it's weird, isn't it? And so they detect it. But as far as like Americans and locals, they don't seem to be paying attention. And the truth is, when you go, downtown is the point of interest. But if you go over, a quarter mile, half mile in any direction, the neighborhoods are, there's people bustling there, but not like before. But downtown is like, I'm waiting to see tumbleweeds start blowing across the road because there's almost nothing going on. What you see the most of is guards guarding the buildings, police, homeless, and then contractors. That's what I see. You don't see the typical suit and tie with a briefcase, businessman coming through downtown anymore.
Huh. What's the tone from the DC police? Are they pretty closed mouthed? Do they where you can make a comment? Let's put it that way.
I mean, generally speaking, I think the DC police, the Metropolitan Police at least, and I would even extend that to the federal police. There's a lot of different agencies here that have police. I mean, these guys are just taking orders, getting their paycheck, and they don't really care either. I haven't seen a traffic stop in Washington in a year and a half. I mean, so they're not patrolling. They're not out looking for crimes. I think they're just not out patrolling and necessarily doing a regular beat like they normally would. They're literally responding to 911 calls, and then they're doing, they're more or less doing it like shutting down the roads for the movement of motorcades and things like that. But like today, I'm down here, and I'm driving around probably for about an hour or so before I talk to you, and I haven't seen one police officer because Joe Biden is out of town. I think he's in Kentucky or something, and there's no need for movement of a motorcade right now, so they're not present. So what happens is they have a protocol where sorry, there's a Black Hawk flying over. That's another thing. There's lots of helicopter activity here, way more than before. So the police have a protocol, when a motorcade's moving, it says, okay, motorcade's going to move. We need to shut down this many intersections, and that calls for 100 police. And so they'll all come in and they'll position for that. The motorcade will move through, and I guess they go back home. It's very bizarre.
Yeah, I think I saw saw a post the other day, I think you did it, with a bus coming out of one of the locations being followed by a van with looked like a guy with full battle rattle on.
Yeah, man, that's another thing. I mean, yeah, I mean, the show of force is intimidating. Just on the day of the national lighting of the Christmas tree, I mean, they must have had. I've never seen that many black vans, black SUVs, unmarked cars that I can remember. Maybe during the occupation of the military, but that was mostly military. I mean, the amount of tinted out black cars, and there's a guy standing there, and he had a full blown assault rifle. And I'm not very good with weapons. I don't know which kind it was, but he had like 3 or 4 magazines strapped to his chest, and you could see the rounds right there. And he had one locked and loaded and a full clip, and he's just standing there, and it's just like, wow, like what is all this for? It's bizarre.
Yeah, it
And
seems
yeah,
like a high
and
level of.
in the
Go ahead.
motorcades now, I mean, they have, there's always like a black truck or a black something following, and they got guys in there with, full tactical gear, automatic weapons. It's just, it really reminds me of a police state between all the surveillance, all the cameras, all the agencies. I'm not a fearful person, so I don't really live my life in fear. But I'll tell you, if you're just an average tourist or citizen and you see this, I would think it make people uncomfortable at the very least.
Yeah,
But again, a lot of people have their heads in the sand. They're just not paying attention.
when you see the pictures, it looks more like a third world country in a lot of cases than it does like America.
Yeah, exactly.
So we were talking a little bit about the buildings and so forth. Is the mall, museums and so forth, are they open or are they still locked up?
So they're, I think most of them are technically open. They have weird hours now. I think like oh gosh, I'm trying to think of the names of them, but like there's Air and Space, and that's actually closed. That's under renovation. There's the Herschel one that's being renovated, but I think that one's open. And then there's a few more Smithsonian's. Right now they have an exhibit called the Futures exhibit. It's open, but I think it's closed like Monday, Tuesday. And and to get in them now, even to enter the museums, you have to wear a mask, which I just don't do. And it's bizarre. I mean, Monday through Friday, basically, there's no one here. And then on Saturday and Sunday, tourists do come in, and there's a little more of a crowd. But it's all this security. I mean, you got to go through screening everywhere you go now. You got to wear a mask everywhere you go now. And I don't know, the museums aren't really a pleasurable experience, at least not for me anymore. I used to love them, but now everything is just upside down. It's like living in a police state with more security everywhere than anything else. I mean, you go into the Smithsonian and there's 15 security guards, which is not how it used to be. So it's intimidating.
Yeah, I remember the Smithsonian, I think Air and Space, and then also the Air and Space adjunct that's out by Dulles were three of my favorites.
Yeah, the Air and Space is pretty impressive if you buy into all that stuff.
Yeah, well, that's true.
In terms of space travel and all that, but yeah, it's the museums here are always some of the most impressive around. The portrait gallery, natural history. But I haven't, I've only been in a couple because they cost me, and I don't buy into the mask narrative, so I just don't play the game. And it's funny, also here locally, it's just amazing, in Maryland and also here in DC, or different parts, at least DC for sure, and then parts of Maryland, they dropped the mask mandate. They're actually rolling that back up now. They're putting full press again. They're closing schools and stuff here locally just as of today. But they dropped the mandate in a lot of places, but the businesses are just like, no, we're still keeping it. So, and that's the thing. I used to love going out and having a beer and having something to eat. But these days I stop in places where I know it's like a local kind of small pub or something like that, because downtown places I used to love, like Old Ebbitt Grill and even a bunch of restaurants, it's just so uncomfortable and unpleasurable to be met with a host who's telling you got to wear a mask, and then you go sit at a table and you can take it off, and the server's all wearing masks. I mean, I just had enough of it. But it's interesting that the government locally has dropped the mandate. I was in the DMV I think Monday, and it was me in the DMV, and then there's a 3-hour wait, and there's hundreds of people in there, and I didn't wear a mask, and no one told me to. And there's a local, they keep a state trooper posted there, because sometimes with a DMV, you have to have the police sign off on, like, if you got the tint removed from your car or got a light fixed or something, you have to. So there's always a trooper here in Maryland at the DMV, and the cop wasn't wearing a mask. So it was him and me not wearing masks out of hundreds of people, and everyone else just is. So it's amazing to see the psyop or the psychosis of the public. They don't even, that's why you say, like, Richard, is anyone else noticing what you're noticing? And I would say not that many, because people just aren't paying attention. They are just totally psyoped by this, pandemic narrative that the news is just pumping out every day, like a religion. And they don't question the narrative, and they do as they're told. It's quite remarkable. It's sad.
Yeah, it's super sad. It's interesting how fast people got trained. Took them a year, and now it's almost unconscious for so many people.
Yeah, and the children, that's the part that kills me. I mean, I see the buses, picking up the children here every day, and these poor children are going on, a year and a half, almost 2 years of a mask. And we've all seen the videos where they put the carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide detector inside the mask, and it starts beeping. It's like a canary in the coal mine. And this is affecting the minds of children, there's no doubt, and adults, but children mostly is who I have most compassion for, because they really, it's almost like they don't have a chance. And Maryland locally just passed the mask mandate in schools until June 2023, and that is so much conditioning and brainwash that these children they're going to feel naked without the mask soon. I mean, they're so conditioned. You should see, they just, they get out of their parents' car, and as soon as they hit the air, they put the mask on, and then so it's just very, very sad.
Yeah, that's scary. So last question on Washington for a minute. So I think I've seen pictures of some of the buildings having like sandbags around the lower levels. Are they still there? And any guess as to what those were for? I think I've seen flooding earlier in the year, but I didn't know whether that was something that continued through the year or what those might be there for.
So I saw some flooding a couple of times, which I thought was very strange. The water down at Haynes Point, the tidal basin, has come up higher than I've seen it. But the answer is, I don't know. Yes, the sandbags are still in the National Mall. They're still at the IRS. They're still at the Department of Treasury. They're stacked up at these weird places. I really don't know what the hell they're for. It's just the most bizarre thing. And they've been there now for over a year. And some places they pop up. Some places they have weeds growing through them at this point. They're near metro stations. They're near the buildings. They're on the National Mall. I don't know. I can't make sense out of that. I have no idea.
But that's all new. That wasn't from, you didn't do that in previous years, right?
No, at least if they were there, and I'm pretty observant. And if they were there, you would see sandbags for like Alexandria across the river. They have flooding problems there. So like when there's a big storm or something, you see sandbags there, but not on the National Mall, not at the federal buildings. Like, I could take, if I were to go look, I could take hundreds of photos of these sandbags and hundreds of different, they're everywhere. It's very strange. It's bizarre. Cause I've been traveling, the last year. I've driven from, East Coast to West Coast more than once. And I've been to Dallas, I've been to Austin, I've been to New York, I've been to Jacksonville. I've been to, Memphis and Chicago and St. Louis and all these places. There's no sandbags in any of those places. So it's definitely not like a standard procedure in terms of like some sort of construction or, so I don't know why they're here. It's totally bizarre.
Yeah. Some of the locations you traveled to were rallies, right? Was that how you picked the locations to head to?
Generally, I was generally curious just to see what the heck is going on in different places. But typically, like, when a rally was announced, about a week's worth of time to get there, I would kind of meander down through the states to get to wherever the rally was going to be. And then I'd stop in cities because cities are what fascinate. Because, you go into suburbia, it's not as bad as it is in the cities in terms of the brainwashing and the pandemic and the reaction. You can see it more in the cities and the suburbs. But yeah, so I got mainly, and then I was invited to some events. Like there was, I think, I don't know the name, but there's like the Reawaken tour maybe, and health and wellness tours that, Clay Clark and different people were putting on. And so I kind of zigzagged around, always with kind of one of those places in mind. They were doing the audit down in Phoenix. So I went to Phoenix a couple of times because I got, someone called me and said the results are coming out. So I went once and then it didn't come out. And then I went again, it did come out. So just kind of, I was actually considering traveling a little bit now again, because there's some things happening around the country that are of interest. But I'm also kind of, I did that for so long. I was literally in my car driving for months at a time. And, it's like I'm also enjoying a little break from that, because I think that Washington, D.C. is always the place in our country, in the world for that matter, where it's an important place to watch what's going on. So I'm hanging out here for now. But yeah, I was going to the rallies for, a while while they were still going on. And then I was traveling around to I was invited to speak at a couple events, and then And I was also following the Children's Health Defense with Robert Kennedy Jr.
Yeah.
He's doing a lot of good work when it comes to these vaccines and the children. So I was just trying to get the word out because, as I'm sure you deal with it as censorship, so it's tough. So I was just trying to, because I had a little bit of a platform. I was trying to show people like, this is actually happening in America. This is actually happening in America, because the media is just a disaster. They won't show you what's actually going on,
Yeah, absolutely. They want to shut down things before they reach most folks.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you mentioned traveling across the country. What were some of your feelings? What kind of folks did you run across? I mean, by and large, are they kind of are they aware, kind of the way we're talking, or are they still struggling?
Yeah, it's interesting, yeah, I mean, that's a good question, because part of the reason that I was doing some traveling too is I was considering moving, because I think that I like the idea of freedom and these things. So I spent some time in Florida, I spent some time in Texas, in Tennessee, and places like that, because I was trying to see if there's a place, and actually Charleston, South Carolina. I used to live there. I love it there.
Mm-hmm.
And the psychosis is everywhere. So there's like little pockets where people are acting a little more normal, but everyone is acting strange. I mean, since we haven't had Hollywood for 2 years or whatever, predictive programming has kind of been erased. A lot of people just are like, they're like a fish out of water. They don't know how to act. And I see that everywhere. So even when I was at CPAC in Florida, in Orlando, and we went out to eat at a couple places, and people think, DeSantis in Florida is so free, but everyone's wearing masks. And then in Texas, the same, Dallas and Austin. I mean, I went to CPAC too. I think it was in Dallas, and the whole hotel staff and everyone there is all masked up, because the big corporations are controlling a lot of this. So, a place can say it's free, or they're not doing these things, but the corporations say, well, that's fine. But here at Starbucks or McDonald's or wherever it is, you still got to wear your mask. That's still going on nationwide, or at least it was a few months ago. So, but as far as the people go, it just depends on where you are and who you talk to. Some places, even here in DC, I'll talk to some people and they get it. And then other people just don't. And I've seen that basically everywhere, I mean, I was down in Tennessee, I think, I forget the name of the town, and there the kids aren't wearing masks. I was in West Virginia, and there's no mask mandate there, but no one covers that. No one talks about it. It's just everywhere where there is mask mandates. So, but even those places, there's still kids getting on those buses that still are wearing the mask. So it's a great delusion. It's a bit of a mess everywhere, as far as I can tell.
Huh. You mentioned a few days ago that you had picked up some observations about international stuff going on. Sounded like it had to do a bit with the airlines. Can you share that a little bit with us?
Yeah, that's interesting. So, and I've actually, since I talked about that, I've been getting, frankly speaking, I'm one person. I can't keep up with all my emails. I try to. I'm pretty good about it, but I mean, on a daily basis, I can't do it. So I do it, a couple times a week. And since I kind of talked about that, so I met there's this flight attendant, and they reached out to me and said, hey, I'm in DC for an overnight. I'm international flight attendant. Do you want to, I'm here. You want to show me around DC? So I said, sure. And they were there with a group of flight attendants, and without mentioning the airline, and they didn't want to go on camera, but what they're doing now is they're literally giving the flight attendants take-home COVID tests, and I guess now they're doing the testing, but before now they just had fake vaccine passports, and I guess they got nervous about that. But anyway, so the airline literally gives them the COVID test to take home. They do it themselves, and that's the level, that's the standard for international travel. So people, that are flying, that are buying into the narrative and thinking that your flight staff is whatever, vaccinated or safe. They're all playing a game. And furthermore, then after I did that story, and that's going across, and the flight attendants are friends with other flight attendants from other airlines, and they're all doing the same thing. And the airlines are literally looking the other way, because they said, quite frankly, they said that the air travel is already reduced by like 70 or 80%. For instance, there used to be X amount of flights a day from Heathrow to Dulles, and they said, let's say that was 10. Now they say there's 1 to 2. So the airlines already are barely flying compared to what they once were, which is never covered. I mean, the stock prices are constantly going up on these things. They're doing way less business than before. But in addition to that, if they didn't look the other way, the flight attendants said the planes wouldn't fly because there wouldn't be enough staff. So that's going on. And beyond that, like in California, someone told me their husband or whatever is got an email the other day, and I'm sure I have more emails on this, but said the same thing. That the California their husband or something works for the California government, and it's the same thing. Take home testing. They just, run it under the sink and put it in the testing thing and hand it in. And that's what passes for testing now, because it's the same situation. There's, the amount of people being vaccinated, I think is way overreported. I think there's less. I don't know what the numbers are, but all these places now are kind of looking the other way. It's clear as day that fraud is being committed. Well, not fraud, but people are just not submitting to the up the nose testing anymore and all that. And they're, and the businesses, the corporations, and the government are allowing them to basically fake the tests to allow things to stay functioning. Is what it seems like to me.
But it sounds awful familiar to me. Government regulations, except people find workarounds or given workarounds where they need to. Isn't that funny?
Yeah,
So,
well, and furthermore, from what basically the standard, or at least with the airline story, they literally are willfully looking the other way. She even said, they even said, if it was a positive test, they almost would look the other way on that. You know what I mean? It's
really?
just, there's no standard.
I'll be darned. Well,
yeah, it's crazy.
So I got two other questions for you. So folks, I'm sure many know where to find you and see what you're reporting day by day. But for those that don't, where can they best see your work?
Yeah, so right now I'm just on Telegram. So I'm just Richard Citizen Journalist on Telegram. Okay.
All right, great. And then as you said, you're one guy out there who's been doing this now for a year. I bet a lot of people would like to try to help where they could. How can they help the effort and help you keep going?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. I'm getting ready to do a video the next day or so about that because, as you're sitting at your home computer, and a lot of people are doing that, and then nothing against that. But a lot of people are taking my stories and others that are doing this because it's firsthand information, and it comes at a cost. It does cost money. So I'm going to put together, I'm just going to put together some links where people can donate to help me stay up and running. And so long as the public at large is willing to contribute, this is not about money for me. But doing this, I'd love to be able to, pack a lunch every day and, be organized and find the cheapest gas and things like that. But there's times where I'm worn out and I grab a hotel for the night, or there's times where I have to stop and eat. And these days, shoot, if you go grab a beer and a dinner in Washington now, it's $50 to $100. That's what it costs now. The food prices are just through the roof. So it just costs some money, and so hopefully as time goes on, people value what I do. Shoot, I have a channel with a bunch of people on there. If everyone throws in a few bucks, I'll be fine, and I think that's one of these things that's, that's emerging now. I think we are, I think as citizens and people that are awake really are starting to put more value on, if you're willing to pay, a Comcast bill for $100 a month, but you're watching these channels, sooner or later, I can only do it for free. I want to keep the content for free. But so right now I don't have the apparatus to tell you, but I have a Cash App and a Venmo, and Zelle, I think. And actually I'm sitting out right now because I need to renew my PO box because people talk about wanting to mail me. I don't know, different. I get I get cards in the mail every day, just from people that support me, which is great. So, prayers are what I ask for most, because it takes a lot of, to do what I'm doing. There's risk involved. Also, I don't think people maybe consider that as much as, and I don't really get into it, but doing what I do, there's risk. And, so, I'm working on it, and I do things as conservatively as I can. But once I would suggest that people follow my channel, and then when I'm in need, I'm just going to ask, and hopefully the support will be there, and we can keep doing this.
Okay, that sounds fair. I bet a lot of people will be champing to help.
Yeah. I hope so.
Anything else we didn't talk about that you think would be interesting for folks to hear?
No, nothing that I can think of off the top of my head, but you can always, if you ever on my channel or anything, and you have my number, so we can always do this again or whatever, and I can try to keep you up to speed with what's going on, and things unfold quick. I would tell you, day in and day out right now in DC, there's not a lot happening, but I think a lot of us that are paying attention realize that we're kind of at critical mass. Something's got to break soon, or we're going to lose this country. And so as that continues to unfold, my plan is to be here and show it to you. It's unfolding a little slowly now, but as different events happen, I appreciate people tuning in, and I'll try to keep you posted best I can on what's going on.
Well, that sounds great. And Boy, I appreciate it because I've been watching you for all of that year. I think I've seen you get in the early days get escorted out of some of the best emergency rooms in the area, buddy. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. All right,
Well,
we
that's what
will.
I mean. I mean, there's a certain amount of risk with what I do, right? And so and as I said, I mean, this is not about money for me. I'm not looking to, the day I had a 20-year career in sales where I made good money for all those years. And now, man, it's more about the children and trying to save a country because we are literally under tyranny. We're socialist now. We got our foot way beyond the door of communism. And I'm hoping that people take what I do and realize they've got to get involved in some way. They've got to take action, whether it's serving an affidavit on your local person or, there's a lot of different things you can do. So I'm just trying to show it to you through my lens. And I try to stay optimistic, but I don't see much good happening right now. And so as things unfold, hopefully turn this around and we save our country and the world for that matter.
Yeah. Well, if what I'm sensing is right, I think more people are getting the message, get up, do something. Everybody's going to be aimed in a different direction perhaps, but everybody can be, have a role in this and help. So
right.
Once again, thank you, brother. We appreciate you being with us. We will look forward to having you back at some point in the future, and we hope you stay safe and keep up the wonderful work. So we'll super appreciate it. All right.
God bless, brother.
All right.
See you.